culture and civilization, which I think is very important. Most of us really go into the performances, exhibitions, without realizing very much what it actually, how it relates to our lives, how it relates to what we believe in, our own set of values, our beliefs, our own culture and civilization. And I think these lectures in that sense, or these discussions, I really would call them lectures or discussions, in that sense tend to put in perspective where we come from, what we are, and where we can go from here. And that is where, from which today's subject has come up. Today's subject, in fact, initially the idea was that we would discuss about archiving of art as a process towards creation of history, or how does the archives relate to the evolution of history. Till my good friend Aman, Nath, he tried to make it sound more jazzy and slightly more compact, well, whatever it is, but slightly more jazzy and art's living history forward. I think this is an interesting subject. To my mind, what it really means is, or what I would tend to really think is, the relationship between arts and history, to put it very, very simply. But then, I mean, I'm a simple man, being a physicist, I'm not a cultural person. I only dealt with culture for about 3 or 4 years in the ICR. And before that, being born in Delhi, so to say, the art of Delhi, the culture is part of my own bringing up. So that's my value system, but otherwise, I'm a physicist, and therefore I try to reduce everything into those linear equations where I can understand point A, B, and C. Now, what actually would living history forward mean? What is history really in that sense? Most of us would look at history either from a very school bookish kind of a point of view, a chronological order of things, encyclopedias about how events have taken place from in different times. Or there could be the leftist interpretation of history, where you tend to see the evolution of the whole states and the societies in terms of how the events have impacted on them. To my mind, can history be described simply as a set of events, even if it impacts on the human society in a particular manner? Or should we look at history as an exploration of how the human race has evolved, or how the world has evolved, in particular the human race? Unless we look at how people have changed over a period of time, what would the history otherwise mean really? Or how the change in how people, or how the change the societies have led to the changes in the formation of the societies. So to me really history really would relate more to the evolution of things rather than just a chronological order of events and things. And that evolution to me is directly related to really arts. It's more arts really than, even though one can say the evolution is political, economic, social, etc., but I think if you look at the totality of things, it's really more what people are all about. You cannot separate, when you talk about people, you can't separate the political thinking, the political instincts, the economic well-being, or the cultural thinkings. You can't really change it. So essentially in that case, personally speaking for me, arts and history would be really the totality of the human experience, and how those human experiences are evolved or woven into, I think, I know, because it has only some 5 kilo okay. So, and this you can find so easily that if you look at how the civilizations have evolved, there are very few examples, in fact I can't recall any, where the progress in arts, the progress in economic or the social structure of society have not been together. You look at the Roman civilization. The best periods in terms of the architecture in the Roman civilization were when you had strong Roman empires and they were able to win over the Mesopotamia, they were able to get the Egyptian empires. India, I mean, Khajuraho could have been thought of really in a state which was economically impoverished. People were happy, they created. Therefore, I think you cannot really separate one aspect of the society from the other. And therefore, if we want to look at how the history is developing, how it is evolving, we must look at the totality of the things in that process. And it is from that point of view that I would say, Aman was absolutely right when he talked about this subject, that the record of art or how the arts have developed or evolved over a period of time, can that be in that case a barometer of the evolution of the civilizations? Because if it is, then how the arts are being impacted or how the societies are behaving, like in today's India, can also be an indicator of where we are going to be, say, in 10 years' time. If you respect art, if you respect our culture, you can be something else. If you forget where you were, then you can be something else. So that is what it is. Fortunately, as a moderator, I think I pose questions and I stop. And it is then left to the eminent panelists to answer or to add to this. We have a very eminent panel here. They have been already introduced. I'm not going to waste much time, but everybody has a specific area of expertise. I will start with Dr. Bharat first, who is a historian, who is a literate, who is a writer, author, etc., everything, and who has an overall view of what really arts and history are all about. Everybody will have around up to 10 minutes. Please use up to 10 minutes, less if you like, because I think more important is after this presentation, we are going to enter into a conversation.
Well, as the first speaker, I welcome everybody here. Good Mohan to this conversation, which is going to be after we have spoken, then we enter into a dialogue with you, and perhaps that would be the most important part. Now, the subject has been introduced as to can art be taken as history? I'm going to take a very small segment of it, just last, let's say, 200 years, and something which is part of activity that is being done in modern times. You see, preservation of art before the industrial era was largely through practice. A particular art form, whatever state of excellence it achieved, was transmitted through the followers, the disciples, and the practitioners. And so was the case in India, which is known by the excessively used phrase Guru Shishya Parambara, right? Now, for the last almost 100 years, or maybe a little more if you take into account printed books also, in India we have the new phenomena that art and its products, not a very good word to use in the context of art product, but is being documented. So first, of course, in the 19th century through books, which was done largely by the Europeans. And then in the 20th century, newer forms of recording came. And India has been recording very early, I think 1905 or 1904, music, etc. Then through photography and painting. And after independence, we have institutes which have specialized in collecting data. Huge amounts of data of all kinds, in all fields of what may be considered art, right from Vedic chant to architecture to music, etc., etc. Now the problem is, what do we do with all this? I mean, right now I am a trustee and executive member of one such institute which has been doing this for past 30 years, the Indira Gandhi, and there I am totally befuddled as to, apart from just collecting data as part of a government policy, and admirable in itself, how are we going to make any sense out of it? For instance, those who collect data have nothing to do with art very often. They are just technicians, or they are office people or bureaucrats, or very elevated bureaucrats sometimes of the rank of an IAS, etc. But the practicing artist couldn't care less about that data. And this is going on. Now, should this continue, and I'm sure this is more or less in the case of painting also, not just in music or architecture or literature, etc. So, how do we really make use of the so-called data or so-called material which has been collected? Now, we are very inefficient in making any sense out of it for one simple reason. Arts are not studied in Indian universities. There are no departments of arts. We still continue with the 19th century idea of the university. And if there are no professional people who have been trained to study art, then how can we possibly make use of that data? Of course, the foreigners do it. The American Institute of Indian Studies does it. All the ethnologists from Europe and America do it. But whether they do it something which can be very useful to us, what are their intentions, that is another story. I don't want to go into that. On the other hand, those who were studying art traditionally, something known by a very outmoded term called the Shastrakaras. See, it's not as if art has not been studied in India. As a matter of fact, study of art in India has an unparalleled record. There is no culture other than India which has produced more books on art. And the changes that have happened in last 2,500 years than India. But then that itself is a closed territory. Because nobody studies the text. Or the study which has been done is very limited. Like Natya Shastra and later text, etc. Again, because there is no professional field. Again, because there is nothing in the universities. Again, because some institutes which do collection of data like IGNCA or some other various institute managed by people, not by the government, they again do not have a specialist team. So how are we going to make sense out of it? Just 2 minutes more and I'll give you my take on it. There is no other option except to start proper academic study. Whether it can be done in the universities immediately or in the next 5 years, that of course is for the governments to decide, whichever government is in power. But I think as people, we have to start making formal institutes. People will not have vast resources at their disposal, but people will have immense amount of skills and a great variety of skills. Some people will know a great deal about painting, some other will know a great deal about art, music, some other will know about sculpture, etc., etc. Now this is already happened. As a matter of fact, if you want to make a list of people who have privately done documentation or made their small museums or collection, your father made a great collection. So all that is there in the people, and people have been investing in it, and people have that interest. What we need is to bring these things together. And they can be brought together now with this new technology, which can do a lot of networking. And proper studies of the history of art. For instance, has there been, I'll take just one or two examples, has there been a great change in Khayal Gaiki, let us say, in the last 110 years? I mean, we have recordings from Goel onwards. So has the real thing changed? And how much has it changed? In what respect has it changed? And when did the change come? Did the change come when the microphone was introduced? Are people singing the same way? See, all that can be studied, all that can be talked about in a professional manner only if you study the documentation. You see, today a musician cannot sing without the microphone or even without that, I don't know the name of that equipment which is right in front and you can see the feedback. Monitor. So every musician has to be monitored today. Monitor is, there is a lizard also called monitor. Monitor lizard, So the monitor has become almost a lizard for the artist. And these changes are affecting the form, their performance capacity. When I was 8, I heard Krishna Shankar Pandit. At the age of 8, I heard him all night, from 9 o'clock to 6 in the morning. Now, I don't think anybody can perform because they don't have that repertoire. If I make a statement like this, I should be able to document it and substantiate it from the data that I have. And this will happen only if you go about it seriously, academically. And I think we got to do it ourselves because, as in many other fields, outsiders have done a much better job. They are controlling the narrative. They are defining. They are redefining. In their books, Carnatic music is now called Tamil Brahmin music. It's not called Carnatic music anymore. It is not called Indian music anymore. It is called South Asian music. All these big changes have already taken place. We have lost control over narrative in last 60, 70 years. So it is a very serious situation and we have to make use of all this data or all this collection, all these wonderful things. I mean, we are very fond of going gaga, yare saab, TV Puruskar, suniye, aajkal aisa koi nahi kar sakta. But how are we going to carry it forward? So this was my submission and I hope you have questions on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gupta. I think you gave us what we expected from you, really. Raised questions and made us think, really. And I think the suggestion that you make that we need to start making formal institutes now to use this documentation and data is a very valid one, really. We don't, I can't think of such institutes where people can actually go for a higher level learning. I mean, you have the Department of Arts and your music, etc. But incidentally, ICNCA was not going to be, when it was conceived, it was not supposed to be just a documentation center. It was supposed to be a center where documentation would be used for further research and would be quality. Unfortunately, that part of IGNCA's has been lost sight of. Another question is that, which you can mull over, is that why should it be done by the governments? I don't see in the USA the governments taking an initiative to develop academic institutes for learning of arts. Rockefeller did not do it for the government.
Thank you, Gupta-ji, for opening the Pandora's box. I think we can talk the whole night. That's not the point. The point is that we are here to share our experiences and try and see how we can see them. All right? That's what the intention. Well, interestingly, I come from a family of artists. And being a practicing artist, myself, and having taught at the university for over 2 decades, and then having sat on the Babu seat for 16 years and having forgotten my art, I look at all this and the context of history, the relevance of history, and how to look at history, perhaps that's it. Right. Well, I'll go about it in a rather arbitrary fashion. Juxtaposing one thought with the other. Tradition was contemporary once. So what is this understanding about? What are we trying to talk about? Is there not a need to recontextualize tradition in the context of what we are, what we believe in, what our cultural values are all about, what are we made of, rather than just limiting it to the context of documentation? Important, but how do we take it forward as an art practice? Number 2, is art meant to be understood? The unfortunate part is that you want to understand why. Rasa needs to be digested, it needs to be tasted. And how can you taste it if you have words which are only approximation of the ideas? And you don't have the capacity to be able to see and rasa swallow. Be it visual arts, be it practicing, performance, or be it architecture. Yeah. In fact, I was reminded while you were talking, I was all the time getting reminded of the 64 art forms and the interdependence of the art forms onto one another. I'm not going to harp on that story, but it's a very fabulous story. Maybe I should say three elements. Here was this king who called the best musician and said, Master, I want to understand music. So the master said, but sire, you are an administrator, why the hell do you wish to understand music? He said, perhaps the spirit of music shall make my administrative skills better. He said, wow, what a great idea. What a great idea. Indeed true, but can you understand the musical spirit without understanding rhythm? Where does rhythm lie? He said, first go to the dancer. Perhaps you should understand rhythm much better there, and then come back to understand the spirit of this. She called the best dancer. The dancer said, oh my God, you've got a great teacher, let me tell you. So right. But the point is that can you truly understand rhythm unless and until you understand form? Well, where does that lie? Well, don't you think it lies more in art and stuff? Oh, so what do you have to do? Go study sculpture first, then come back to learn music. And you shall understand its application onto administration. So the best sculptor was called. And the same thought was shared. They said, my God, you've got great sense. You've got great teachers. She really shared wonderful thought. But sire, I have a question. Can you truly understand form unless and until you understand the time-space relationship closes? So first learn that before you can. In this fashion, and cut the long story short, it goes into the 64 art forms back to music. Is it not valid today? Which aesthetician in the world has written about it? Is my question. That's why I raised the word revalidating tradition. I have 3-4 other philosophical thoughts because I think we're going to enter into a dialogue. And I'll also come back to some personalized experience as far as history is concerned in the teaching of art because I've taught everything. And interestingly, never been trained as an art historian, but always headed the department and always taught art history. And I'll come to that. So where was I? Tradition was contemporary arts. I want to come up with a few philosophical thoughts, throw it open, and let's see how we can put it together. I'm a great admirer of Marcel Proust. Good. Each one of us is similar and dissimilar to each one of us, as many as there are eyes and minds that awaken every morning. The role of a creator is to provide an image to it, because our observations are not mere passive records. The whole crux of the issue lies there. Observation is distillation. And the medium. But unfortunately, the medium becomes far more important than the content. And you need to understand it, and you want to understand it, and you want to experience it. Alright? After we try to really grasp it. The other thought that I have, which I firmly believe in, is you said you were trained as a, this is for you. I was trained as a scientist, you said. Physicist. Okay. Fantasy is the basis of all hypotheses, as much applicable to science as it is to art, because creativity is the common denominator. If you're interested in stories, I have hundreds and thousands of stories.
I can tell you many anecdotes, yes.
No, it's not about you telling me anecdotes.
No,
me telling you anecdotes. The third is, ideas can be hypothetical. But they need to be governed by their own logic to formulate their own meaning. All these great men that have been part of the history or the making of history have actually believed in this, and that's the precise reason why histories are made. Irrespective of the fact that I was telling and pulling Ashish's leg and saying that the political aspect of rewriting history, yeah, inference. How do you infer? And what is it that you infer? I firmly believe that a work of art is the only true living example of history. The rest of it and the state, the other is history's inference. Now, I'll go back to my personal two experiences. I have lots more to share, but I think I won't take all. You see, I studied at Baroda. And the most interesting thing was I had some of the greatest teachers, etc., etc., etc. But I was the first one who was to enter the class, sit on the back bench the moment the first light went in out. And the last light came in. Why? Because everyone said the same thing. What was so different? No one was talking about the work. Everyone was talking about except one man. His classes I always attended, essentially because, irrespective of the fact that I didn't also. Why? Because history was so boring. The work was far more interesting. No one was talking about the work. Everyone was talking about this color, this period, that, produced then by this. Okay, fine. So the first decision I made, when they made me the head of Jamia, I said, if you are interested in information, it's available in books. Go to the library. That's what it's meant for. But if you're interested in understanding, realizing, and experiencing a work of art, then sit in my class. And that's what it is. And I devised complete syllabus, which starts with, I won't go on describing it, transformation of nature into principles of art. Concept of life. From prehistory right until contemporary times, now the concept of life, which is completely imaginary, being used. And this will give you a great sense of visual acquaintance with great works of art on a pictorial basis. So आप काम देखेंगे और समझेंगे. जैसे डॉक्टर नस है ना, वैद जी नस पकड़ते थे, है ना, नब्ज पकड़ते थे, and you would say ये हुआ. How where did it come from? When I was 7 years old, and that was the greatest gift I got from my father. He gifted me a particular publication that was brought and imported into India. First copy was always for me. It was called Discovering Art Series. Every week, a particular magazine came. It was called Discovering Art, based on one issue, one artist, and you sat and didn't read anything. You're 7 years old, how much would you And you saw, and you continue to see, and even today when I want to see this, and gives you so much, because then you are actually getting attuned to the vibration that the work of art is there. तो वही है ना, बात रिकॉर्ड करने की नहीं है। एक और बड़ी हंसी की बात करूँगा कि because I talked about the wealth. One of my personal wealth was when they are child, and because of my connection with Japan, one day when I went to his clinic, बड़े softly बोलते थे, अरे मैं आपका बहुत देर से इंतजार कर रहा था, आपके बारे में सोच रहा था। सब मैंने क्या किया सर? देखिए आपकी ससुराल से इतने सारे जापानी लोग आए हैं वीडियो कैमरे लेके, ये मैं ना नब्ज कैसे देखता हूँ ये रिकॉर्ड करना चाहते हैं। इनको जरा समझाइए ये रिकॉर्ड नहीं हो सकता। This is it. Now, last point, of course. Many others. Fortunate or unfortunate that I became the director of the National Gallery of London, an institution that deals with modern and contemporary art. And jokingly, I always said, and will continue to say, contemporary is most temporary. Only time shall tell. If it's able to stand up to the transformation or the test of time, the work of art shall remain. No one can fight it. But it depends on how you infer. It's inference. And that is the part of history that I'm actually interested in. That's the interesting. And most interestingly, I've just recently written an article for Harper's Bazaar, which is the lead article on museums. And I started with the fact that the old concept of the museum was an ajaib ghar. Anything and everything that you corrected, why, how, was dumped into the ajaib ghar. They still call it the ajaib ghar. Many of them line laga ke log ajaib ghar dekh ke aate hain. But it depends upon how it is curated. The word curation is बहुत अच्छी चीज, interesting चीज. It's not assemblage. It's about making things work against, with, so that it is able to radiate a certain, vibration of a certain context that you are able to radiate. So thank you. We'll continue to talk, and thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Maybe something else. But anyway, let the bit flow.
I didn't use the word immortality.
I know it's my word, but it's inference.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we will discuss that. We will discuss that as we go along. The second thing is rasas. I think it's rather a tragedy of the human race that we want to basically articulate everything, and we want to basically describe everything in words. We hardly ever tend to internalize, and I suppose that because that internalization is a symbol of the cessation of activities, the life ends, and we are all afraid of that, I suppose. So we tend to articulate much more than necessary. But anyway, those are just some of you. I will tell my anecdotes afterwards, not to take more time. Aman? And when we talk about that, maybe I had just thought, can we think of architecture as a way of really developing documentation, archives, records after the palaces and the temples, but then not record of our history?
Actually, I'm partly in the middle and I don't have a mic, so I can stand up. But it's okay, Professor.
Ashish said he also will stand up and talk.
If you get the heat, I haven't done that.
No, you did very well sitting down. We might have dropped the audience otherwise. Okay. No, so for 1 minute on the topic actually, living history forward is actually understanding India as India understands itself in time, because we understand time as cyclic rather than linear. That's a huge difference between the West and us. So in the West, people are born here and they die here. So when they get on that linear thing, there is insecurity, unhappiness, the wrinkle cream, all that starts to happen. But because we are in a cycle, living history forward means that you start at a point and you live through it, and you reach the point where it pushes itself forward. So actually, the West understood this slightly wrong, I think, when they said Brahma is the creator, dot here, Vishnu is the preserver, and they called Shiva the destroyer. He is not the destroyer. Not in the oldest Tamil text in Sanskrit, he's never called the destroyer. He's actually the regenerator. Because by destroying the old cycle of time, he gives birth to, so he's part Brahma, part something else, but he's not Yama, you know. So I think what I was suggesting was that all of us, whether it's dance form, whether it's art, are actually talking about how we take that India forward, that which is important, that which is the essence of India, and so I think that's what we're going to do. And in my case, because I am involved with restoring unlisted architectural buildings, for me it's literally keeping the past standing. So it is a great feeling. Let's say if you go to the oldest place we restored is the Hill Fort of Kesroli, which is 700 years old. You don't need to put Italian marble or a jacuzzi. You know, it's awesome to see, wow, this wall is 700 years old. So we value India for what it is. So what worries me, and I think should worry all of us who are sitting on this panel, is that 100 years ago, you know, if our grandfathers met an American or a Britisher, they had an unequal relationship with the West, you know, because we were colonized, so the West was here, they were here, they looked up to the Goras as sahibs. But then that kept changing, you know. In my father's generation, they had come closer, and in our generation, I think we were born into, you know, when we met an American kid, when we were kids, we thought they were different, they wore Levi's jeans, and we looked up to them a bit. But during our time, that process was over, and all of us sitting here cannot be intimidated by anybody who comes from the West. And if they give us bullshit, we can give them 10 more kilos of it, you know. No. You know, so I think, so the tragedy is that having arrived at this point in India, that we are again going back to listening to them and again placing them, you know, at a higher thing. Why are we getting architects from Singapore to design in India? You know, why isn't there enough happening here? Why are we not inspired? Why are we still looking at Western art forms and saying because they did it, therefore, you know? I mean, if you are talking about installations, I don't know what your view on that is, but we've had installations much before the West did, you know. What is the Durga Puja all about? You know, the greatest of installations, and at the rate at which we understand the ephemeral and the permanent, you know, who would have the guts? You know, if you see the kind of sculpting they do on those, you know, the goddess and on the demon, that you just throw it in the river, because we are a living civilization, because we have pride in our, you know, and we know that we can rebuild the Taj Mahal if it fell down or whatever. So I think that we should not be insecure about this, you know, living history forward. We should just smoothly have a transition into it, and there is enough wisdom. And I think I went to the Khokhar University recently, and I was quite delighted actually that they're looking at education in a very different way. And we're not intimidated by what people are telling us, you know, we can also give it back to them. And there's a lot of people, I was on the India Foundation of the Arts, I was a trustee, and I think, you know, IFA has done fantastic work. If you just see every year the amount of people young people who come with the amount of amazing things, you really have to choose who would you give a scholarship to. But then once it is collated, once it's collected, as Bharat said, what do you do with it? We have now to make the youth so proud of it, you know, to un-Singaporize them or decolonize the psyche, so that get into the act of looking at all this and forming something more fantastic from it. So Kumaraswamy, long ago actually, said the nations in the West think they're very civilized because they take an object of, you know, a lota, for example, of everyday use, and they put it in the museum. and put it under a spotlight and do a terrific signage, But in India, he didn't say this, I'm saying, everybody in the village takes a lota and goes to the loo, So it's an object of everyday use, and it has the perfect dimensions, when you pour over it, how it's held, it's ring, it never leaks into itself. It's not like trying to be so stylish that you pour the milk and it falls in your saucer rather than the cup, So all these time-tested things are there. So why should we be taking things from the West? So in my field of architecture, there's something called Ecrom in Rome, which sets the standards for how you're supposed to do restoration. Okay, so there was an amazing man who was looked at like God. So when Francis and I did the book on Shekhawati, we were actually the people who brought the papers of the National Trust from England, because our publisher of the Shekhawati book was the publisher of that, and showed them to Kubur Jaikar, and I was the youngest founder member of INTAC. But I realized very early there are two kinds of people: those who talk, and make files and papers and all this, and there are those who do, because that is also very important. I'm not running down the first lot, because documentation, archiving, all that is very important. But if you just kept documenting art and never painted, then you're a dead civilization. And the fact that we are living civilization, I think that we have the right to question what the West is giving us. So what they're saying, here's a building, part of it is fallen down, and you can't bring an intervention into it, so you have to use glass and chrome and just stand it up and say this is old, this is new. I mean, in an unlisted building like the Nimrana Fort, if a part of it is fallen down and you have the masons, you have the materials, you have the knowledge, today you have it, their sons and their grandsons may not have it, Why wouldn't you stand up if half of something is fallen, stand it up? Because we're a living civilization. And we are the only great living civilization in the whole world, I think with Japan at another scale. And so we should be telling the world how we want to do our thing, and not taking their things as gospel. And I wanted to say that we also have carrying notions of the past in India. I think that there's some problem on that. We just think of something, and today we say we were so great, and therefore everybody has to take it from us. But if you study things in some detail, I was just reading something quite amazing actually on Hatha Yoga, and there is a text which is called Hatha Pradipika, okay, which talks, we always say yoga has 84 lakh asana. And I learned yoga from Dhiren Brahmachari. He used to say yoga has 84 lakh asana, and even now today when you learn. But actually in that book, they only describe 2. So it's amazing that, we talk of concept, because if you're breathing like this, or if you lift your leg and do this, everything becomes different, because then a different part of the body is relating to the breath, to the body, to the muscle. So you can go on making permutations and combinations. But we're not just gloating in that. I think that the idea is that India floats this concept of 33 million gods, nobody counted them. But the fact that anything can be made into a god. I went to Pushkar, they made a police station, they put a shivling outside, it's called Thaneshwar Mahadev. It's perfectly alright, So, and in Vankaner, the Maharaja of Vankaner has in there, when you go up the hill, there are amazing garages with Bentley, Rolls Royce and something standing there in a Shiva temple, and it's called Motoreshwar Mahadev. So why not, because the Maharaja is saying, please, Shiva, make sure the axle doesn't break, because I have to get it from London or whatever. You have got a transactional prayer, because Hinduism is about that. So I think that we have to think our system, ourselves, not spend the rest of our lives flagellating ourselves. I thought of another example, which is a bit comic, but it will interest everybody here. There's so much talk about fair and lovely cream. And everybody's saying, oh, how shameful, we can't be dark, we have a complex. No, if somebody wants to be Gora, let them be, The whole of the West, what does it do? What is the largest selling cream? They have tanning oils.
So they're all wanting to become dark, but their press is not flagellating them, saying, the people you colonize, now you want to be like the people. There's no judgment, you want to be color, you be color, because, you go for a holiday, you come back, and people say, oh, the rich people have to be tanned because they have the time to holiday to lie in the sun. So you say, wow, you had a great holiday. And there it's a plus. But here if your maid servant is a little shade dark and she wants to be Gora, you're telling her you want to be like a maid servant. So I think that we have to take what the West has given us and carry this forward with this great momentum of what you people are saying, the greatness of India, which is largely recorded or whatever is getting lost, and filter the new generation through it, so that there is a refinement. There is also some redundant thing. We can't just carry everything. It's like sludge, burden, yes. And we carry it by suggestion. We carry it by symbolism, and we carry it to the greatness that we imagined India.
That was great, Aman. I only wonder really whether the future can exist without the past. So I suppose that we have to really think about this thing, that is the history is just not history. It's actually moving forward really. So as I said, that not just basically something about the spirit.
Namaskaram, Shanta first. Shanta Karam Shayanam, and we remember Shanta ji, and thank you living legends, Suresh Bhai Saab and all others who remember this. Very fine facilitator, scholar, and true Punjabi who did everything for everyone without any agenda. So we remember Shanta ji on this occasion, and thank you for really continuing with this series, Dipayan Bhai, Suresh ji and others. सभा जन को नाचीज का प्रणाम। इस सभा में इतने गुणवान, यशवान, धनवान, बलवान, शायद एक दो शैतान भी बैठे हों। मैं आपकी छोटी सी संतान, पहले से माफी का हकदार हूँ। छोटी सी क्योंकि मैं अनुज हूँ। My birthday comes once in 4 years, so I take time growing up. So I'm truly the youngest in this panel in that don't go by my white beard and fair and lovely hair. And having made you laugh and relaxed you a bit, 3 concerns, and I'll take quickly because Bharat ji very ably put the perspective of substantiate. Rajeev bhai of course took it further to say what is tradition. Aman ji in his wisdom said, yes, get real. And Suresh bhai is of course playing the linkage between all generations and all art forms. I will address in reverse from young India because that's what really concerns us next. We've been talking of the past, the present, and the future is young India. And we think of a dance form which is coming from temples to courts to proscenium stage, all that history we are aware of. What happens to young India now? And when you think of young India today, the country, not the news magazine, when you think of India today, the young India and the digital world is the biggest reality. So what has happened is when you think of space, the proscenium, the great Mohari, the great dances of the Devdasis, all that in the temples, and then move it to the courts, 500 years, all the gharanas of Kathak, and then you take to the traditional forms, which are Melam arts, Kuchipudi, Kathakali, all-night performances. You bring it down to contemporary India. And it's very amazing in 100 years, less than 70 of our independence, how the dance dynamics have changed so quickly, despite being many schools, one says, oh, it is only 200 years old, the Margam format, the format of 7-8 items, in each form, or it has something of tradition which is from 5,000 years ago, wrongly or rightly connected to Mohenjo-daro dancing girl, as we also discussed. But at this point in time, what does young India, somebody who's learning or being a student or doing a PhD, what are the sources? And this is where history plays an important part. History is a process and protocol, so they have to refer to some book for their PhD, some guide has to do it. It's another matter, our universities are so democratic, that's the only word, because if you see the qualities of some of the dissertations and PhDs, woe betide on all of us because it is going down dismally. Can you believe I now live 10 days a month in Bangalore, and Bangalore University does not have English literature, history, or any of the humanities. It has only engineering, medical, and computers. So to do English literature, history, or any of the humanities, Bangalore students have to go to Pune or Bombay. There is not a course in the 1,000 acres of the fine Bangalore University. There is absolutely no course on this. That's because the paradigm shift has happened so quickly in the last 20 years. So what does young India do? Let's also connect it to ground realities. You go through history, you go through philosophy, you go through the arts, and then where do you take it forward? Are you a practicing artist? Are you a teacher? Are you an academician? Are you by default, having passed an exam, preside over the fortunes of a large section of society through the civil services, or you stand up and get seen and win an election and then decide policy? So all these 5 things are happening and working at the same time, and our institutions are facing a tremendous challenge today, because on one side, if you take up somebody so qualified as Dr. Ramesh Gaur fighting for UNESCO's presence in India after 26 years of library sciences, having come from JNU to IGNCA, or Avinash Pasricha ji was here documenting dance and music over the last 50 years, or somebody else, where does the twain meet for young India? And young India becomes a concern, because all of that we speak, sir, and all the eminent people here, is for the next generation too. So when we leave this volume of work or whatever documentation or what have we, it is also its end use in the coming times. And that's where when you go to NGMA and see a young person taking 50 people and explaining them Jamni Roy or Rabindranath Tagore or a modern painter, as a chance to see 2 days ago, one realizes that people are genuinely interested in learning. If we talk down to audiences in any form, that becomes a disconnect. If you make it Shastrik, it becomes worse, because as Dur we have lost Sanskrit as a language. So at every point, as Aman bhai said and Rajeev ji, we have become so compartmentalized that the interdisciplinary approach also gets totally off the radar. So what does young India do in all this? Where does young India go in all this? Young India goes to Boston, or young India goes to Singapore, and young India gets the best degrees and comes back here and then has to go back. So it's a vicious cycle which also has happened partly because, very rightly said, we have not celebrated, believed, or focused on our own histories. The colonial experience, of course, has been an important factor. Of course, we have had a disconnect between the last 1,000 years, and no place explains this better than living in Madras and Bangalore and south of India. It has no clue about the partition of India. I'm a product, my family is a product of partition of India. As introduced, I'm Punjabi, Sikh from my father's side and Tamil from my mother's side, born in Baroda and brought up in Bengal. So when I see this disconnect of South India, the price North India, Central India paid, and the losses of partition of India itself as a cultural, historical example, and much as you may speak about Punjabis as lacking culture, it's also the Punjabis in Delhi and North India which have preserved this part of India from so many in terms of invaders in the 1,000 years we have seen. So in South, the insularity has also ensured a succession of historicity and continuity, which has sort of disconnected us in North. So how far space or geography decides history? That has always been my concern. Geography also makes history, because the same geography will affect some way the historical process totally differently. That is a point to also think. Coming to dances, look at contemporary dance. Sorry Rajeev bhai, but I'd never understood abstract art. It is so abstract that my mind, it was like this painting at the back here, and somebody said, what a beautiful painting it is. I said, but that's a blank canvas. He says, no, there was grass, cow came, ate the grass and went away. So the canvas is blank. So I said, yes, what do you do with dance in contemporary space? How does movement, which is the same 2 arms, same 2 legs, same human body, how do you use it as a tool for creative expression, which would then convey in terms of some meaningful interpretation that also stands the test of time, because ultimately an artist has to be willy-nilly solvent. How does one pay for being an artist in today's scheme of things? You read biodatas. I think biodatas in India sometimes are the best pieces of creative writing, because they're so democratic. A coast-to-coast tour, which is only 2 cities on maybe LA and in New York, but becomes coast-to-coast cities. And every 3rd person I meet is a Padma Awardee, or every 5th person is very Abhushan, or every 7th person, of course, is very, very Brahmagyani. But where is the benchmark in our societies? When we think of benchmark in literature, in history, in music, in dance, As rightly pointed by Buddhaji in his opening remarks, that do you compare with 100 years ago, a recording when there was no mics, or you can connect today when the voice cannot be thrown beyond this wall or beyond this room. So contemporary dance and contemporization of a traditional arts is a big context. Is Odissi only what was done 50 years ago by 4 gurus, which were documented and then became a form from Jatra, Ras traditions, from the theatre traditions, and from akhadas, or is Odissi as the form we see today? Kathakali is a good example. It cannot be done solo because there's always 2 or 3 patra characters. So it has to be an epic tale. Likewise, Kuchipudi, which was an all-women preserve, all-male preserve, has become totally an all-women preserve. There are only 1 or few boys in every style to be found. So when we put together Purush ensemble, it's very difficult to get a Manipuri because Radha Krishna is also done by females. It's very difficult to get in Kuchipudi a boy because now roles are reversed. So when we talk of women's empowerment, gender equality, all the present day concerns which are very valid, it also affects our traditional arts. So for a contemporary space of Indian dance, which is traditional, it still becomes a moot point. What is tradition, as Rajeev ji rightly said, and what is modernity? Please understand, and there's always a confusion when we teach at universities and go here and there, and no one is really interested. They just want their PhD and their degrees and get going. It's not about knowledge. What happens to modern dance in India? Is this a language? America's modern dance was a response to Western classical ballet. The American response was break away from all of classicism. And to the first point of Rockefeller supporting the arts or Scripps or anyone else, it's purely to do with the tax structure. We have absolutely no tax relief for anyone willing to donate other than that 80G situation, which is fine, 80G is Hanji, Naji, Hogaji. But 80G is only a situation where you cannot endow a university with a chair. You cannot endow a foundation, the Smithsonian. We need to create that infrastructure from financial aspects so that people who are willing to donate also are able to do that, which is why America's best institutions are private. There is no Ministry of Culture in America. It is National Endowment for Arts. There is no Ministry of Culture in England. It is the National Council of Arts, because professionals sit on those committees and decide. Not some babu, sorry to say, it's a very highly enlightened and they are very qualified people, but culture is about people. It is not about process. You cannot say A plus square, B plus C. I was very bad at maths, so don't even expect a formula. I'll conclude with one point, and this is for all of us to think, that when we're taking all of these social concerns and contexts forward, we have to take the young 500 million population of India today with us. There is no other go. Unless young India is sensitized, young India is with us in this process, young India takes this upon itself as the next stage of evolution of Indian society. I think no matter what we say, we may sound like Brahmagyanis or non-Gyanis, but it is important that young India is listening and young India comes into this fold. Mangalam Bhava.
So one point I have to prove to be right. Thank you. Well, I think it has been a very, very rich discussion. I'm tempted to say something about the contemporary dances because I do organize a festival, international festival of contemporary dances on an annual basis. This year I have not been able to do that so far for various reasons, but we are going to soon do it. And I think I really don't see the conflict or the contest between the classicism and the contemporary forms. I really don't see, as Rajeev said, traditions have to be put in a context really. Odissi, you also mentioned, the Odissi that we see today is the same Odissi 50 years ago. Uday Shankar used Kathak heavily. One of the best contemporary groups is actually in your city, Jai Shankar. And if you watch the performances, I don't think that the modern dance in the USA was a response to the Western classes. In a sense, it could have been, but I think it was more really a response of the young generation to discovering a new idiom, or discovering a new style, based on the available idiom. So ballet and jazz were used to create a new space. This is what our dancers are doing really. If you see Jayachandran, he uses, I think, not Karate, but he uses Bharatanatyam and I'm trying to forget it. But anyway, he uses those folk dance form and the classic to create a completely different experience on the stage. I think that remains equally valid as any other classical dance form. But anyway, it is not for me to really travel the discussion. The floor is now going to be open for the discussions. I'm not going to limit myself to any questions. I think you can start with any questions that you might. For me, it will be very useful to understand then a very practical thing. So where do we go with the documentation? Is it important or not important? If you don't have the institutions where the documentation can be used, so what do we do? Any ideas from the floor or here? For the floor, yes.
I have a question to you, Ashish. You talked about a very important thing at the end of the last you said, sensitizing the young. As I see today, that is something which is not happening at all. And why it is not happening, I don't know. The young generation who have come into the last 10 years or 15 years, I've seen many young people coming into art forms and they're doing well. But it is not the learning. They are all, a very quick course. 10 years going abroad. Sir, मैं इतना बढ़िया बजा रहा हूँ सर, मैं 10 बार विदेश आया हूँ, मेरे को एक काम. This is a very serious concern for our music and the musicians, whether it's dance or instrumental music or vocal. It's a very serious. In fact, I have proposed to the, worked out a paper for skill development of artists, and which is a very important thing which should happen. I don't know whether it will happen or not. I have already put up a paper. But how do you sensitize? How do you bring in the interest among the generation? Because those who are interested are not interested in music. They're in a quick box. So, if you have, because you have so much experience, all of you sitting here.
I think the Bayanji, none of us would have an infallible, perfect, final answer. But two things have happened. One is, it's the only part of our society. We have policies for everything, even what not to do. But we don't have one on culture.
Yeah.
And wisely so, it happened when we became independent because of layers of history. We said, okay, इतने बड़ा country है, कहाँ मणिपुर है, कहाँ मदुरई है, क्या एक policy बनेगी, for aspirations of a society. So we have, that is one part at policy level. So it's not connected to school education. The biggest de-linking, Macaulay or otherwise, whomsoever you wish to give credit to, has been the de-linking of arts with education. One.
I think that's the main point.
Second point is that the British, it was a tool, as historians we know all of that, I won't get into discourse here, but the biggest tool was to divide and rule, and that continued even at the cultural level, partly because the perspectives came from that. So since no policies were set under the 50s and 60s, this whole idea of what I call new folk dance parade at Republic Day syndrome, which is mostly has affected the forms in their own settings when they come and parade through Rajpath or Lal Killa and walk, which is not its natural setting. That's a good example. Let's forget classical forms. They are very esoteric. They need literature, shastric knowledge, music and all that. But dancing and music for yourself is folk, we call it traditions, tribal, ritual, any of this, Tayyam if you take any of the other, Tirkutu, any of the traditions, Bengal, whatever. That we have become straight-jacketed. So we don't have a policy on one side. We have straight-jacketed some of these very agrarian forms into a cityscape. And third and lastly, society. Let us take responsibility. None of us, especially in this state model of freebies, of entering a dance and music performance for free, whereas in America or Paris you'll have to pay 50 francs or $50 for the last row and the last seat. Here it is this model from the 60s and 70s. I won't give credit to any one country, but we used to call it the Soviet model of state-supported culture. So everything was for the people, by the people, of the people, and the state was paying for it. And it amazes me to learn that only 3.2% Indians pay taxes in the first place as we speak today. Can you believe this? In a country of this dimension, please do Wikipedia, Google search right away. Only less than 4% people pay taxes. So the government resources, again, if it has to dovetail into anything, culture budget is 0.11% of the union budget. 0.11%, not one full. From that 0.11%, as DG Saab knows very, very well, having been on that sort of fence, and must compliment him, is one of the best director general. That way he continued his work with the arts even today after retirement. Is the best face of ICCR because he was artist friendly. When you create these institutions, it's for the artists, it's for the arts. It's not for another ambassadors posting somewhere to somewhere. That's fine, that's part of the... So ये तीन बातें रहेगी. Policy नहीं थी, articulation नहीं थी, और Bharat, and one was about society putting premium on the arts.
Politically, I believe Mrs. Gandhi had put up a committee in this, that, and the other. It never worked. But for education of the art forms, I think unless it is brought into, as you rightly said, what are the schools and what is that from the very beginning. From the schools, if like moral science and Payana, which has no science, at the end of it there are no morals here. What we say. But if we had done anything on art, literature, and art and artists, and some kind of a culture game in the schools, I think that would have been taken care of.
Who can speak on this?
Yeah,
Rajeev, both of you. And Rajeev of you,
in fact, I'd just like to add 2 or 3 points. Have we been able to create Rasit and Jigyasu in the educational system? They don't have a place. Yeah? Because education is so non-Rasik and so near-us. I think that's what I described. My own education was. I'll give you an example of how many people, when I was a director, my own friends will come back and tell me, oh well, when I went to London and saw the Tate Modern, what a museum, man, you've got to pay $12 or £12. Have you entered your own museum? For free. For free, for 10 rupees, you haven't. Now, the other thing that I wish to say is that when this extension of the National Gallery of Modern Art was built, Indian architect, it was a hue and cry. Of course, the architect was not chosen during my time, it was chosen 20 years prior to that. It was built during my time. But when I asked important architects who were obviously envious because they didn't get the job. May I ask you 5 questions? Have we, in the context of architecture, been able to create a language of architecture that we can call our own? Silence. In a country like ours, which has so much of natural light, why the hell are we using artificial light when there is paucity of electricity? Have we been able to harness natural light? Silence. Why do we wish to create white cubes? Because we wish to emulate the West. White cubes and put up works of art as white cubes. In the white cubes. Why can't we have a flexible space that can remodel, restructure itself to any kind of a specific need? Because it anyway took me 25 years to build that space and build one in Bangalore. Silence. It's in the same space that I first celebrated the Doshi, the architect, and celebrated him as an artist and had his retrospective. The architects and the whole, oh my God, not artists, you celebrated an architect. The same university today gets supplied. And now he's noted by the world. And I'm so proud of the fact that it was Vivi Doshi who picked up the phone that night and said, तो सब आपका किया हुआ है मैंने क्या किया काम तो आपने किया चलो उसको बताया तो आपने No, I'm not talking about myself. So what am I trying to hit at? यहाँ एक और प्रॉब्लम है कि दिशा नहीं है और दिशा अगर है तो आपको चुप कराया जाता है राइट तो हम लोगों को मिलके वो दिशा को ढूंढ के जो अपने प्रयत्न कर सकते हैं वो करना पड़ेगा और ज़्यादा लंबा नहीं बोलना पड़ेगा. We can only have certain amount of this thing. That's what we tried to do. That's what I tried to do while as the director. Picasso kiya. I did Picasso. When I did Picasso, my first major exhibition, the biggest learning lesson. And I thought to myself, Picasso, because the President of India decided to have Picasso, both the presidents, and actually that was true. Why can't we celebrate our own artists with the same spirit, the same zeal, and celebrate them on the international platform? Yeah? So, it's the educational system we are responsible.
There is no debate on this that the greatest harm to art has been caused by its lack in the education system. But more than that, there is a new phenomenon which is happening in South. Our whole attitude to art is to look upon art as something trivial or commercial. You see, for instance, Indian cinema, which was a great supporter of so much of classical dance, folk dance, all kinds of poetry, all kinds of very fine, right up to tapestry and sartorial, everything was beautifully till about the films in 80s and 90s, in fact, right up to that. It has made a flip. Now, whatever is shown in the name of art is absolutely trivial. And I am very pained, and I'm sure he is also pained. There is no dance anymore in Indian dance anymore in Indian films. Indian films are the greatest in quantity in the world, but they are without any Indian dance now. So that's one great casualty, because dance has been so much trivialized. I think we have to look upon one crucial problem. Like it or not, Indian arts were pursued as sacred arts, as something valuable. Today, under this whole spell of socialism and modernity, we wanted to make anything sacred as just religious. कि ये तो साहब religious है, इसलिए इस पे secular space में नहीं आ सकता, इसलिए आप इसको बाहर छोड़ दीजिए. As a result, that whole process of creativity, where people had that classical language and they created right in the street with that, something which today we call folk, but it was created all over by craftsmen all over India, and it traveled from one end of India to another end, and there was constant exchange because they were dedicated, and they were dedicated because they thought this was valuable and sacred. This very definition of sacred as dedication became communal or religious. I think we have to now sort this thing out. And Indian art will not survive if you want to follow a Western model of art.
When you enter the Metropolitan Museum, they have the most extraordinary flower arrangement, and there's a little plaque which says, by a permanent gift of Miss Daisy Fellows, a wonderful, cultural lady, a very rich lady who put some money in the bank, and the interest of that just pays for the flowers. And here, I was doing research for a book on the Tatas, and Pandit Nehru tells J.R.D. Tata, don't talk to me about profit, that's a dirty word. So coming from such different things. So how do you want, people to set up a private museum, private universities, all this, when it is actively discouraged? I mean, you are hounded for collecting art, as if, it's better under the Geneva Act that all the cultural councillors can walk away with Indian art and their baggage can't be checked. But here you are buying Indian art to save it in your own country, and you're looked at as somebody who's doing something wrong. There is a huge madness about our psyche being colonized to a point that whatever we do is wrong, because of the double standards.
Can I just add something? You see, let's talk about this sacred.
Let me see if there is any other point, because we are actually getting to the closing time. So let me see if there is any point.
I just wanted to give an example.
And then we are going to round up. Yes. Is there a microphone here?
Maybe you can come.
थोड़ी बुलंद आवाज में बोलिएगा. Everyone can get a document.
Let us have all the questions together and then they can.
I'm working on that. It's not question, comments, whatever. It's an exchange.
It has been very exciting to hear about all the expert comments on the arts. I have a question to the eminent panelists. India is what India is.
There are the babus who are there. There are the people. There is no incentive for the students to go for the art. So what is the way forward, keeping in mind all the problems, whatever we have, and let's not consider them as a problem. So we have a case in front of us. So how to take it forward in a real sense, rather than just debating. We have a problem, but what is the real solution to that?
Off with the babus. Okay. Any other comments? Because this is a yes, please.
I'm Ramesh Kaur from IGNCA. Thank you for such a valuable. I have few things to say in this regard. Like I have been seen art and memory. Yeah, very brief, but just one very important point which I want to raise here is I have seen at least 25 countries' memory institutions during various visits. The basic problem and difference I see here, where we are lacking is, first thing is the use of technology. We are very far behind. Second thing is the presentation, and third thing is the access and lack of awareness. Maybe there may be very less education program, but these education programs are not connected with art, museums, libraries, and archives. Like in IGNCA, we digitize 300,000 manuscripts, 100,000 visuals, 5,000 rare books, and a lot of photographic collection in 2009 itself. Now where these lying? These are lying in CD and DVDs. And why these are lying in CDs and DVDs? Because we don't have a proper digital archiving system. We proposed it. Ultimately, we depend on organizations like CDEC and NIC to develop the system. And what we need world-class system. So what is the problem? Like if these materials are available online, today IGNC will be one of the best organizations in the world. People can understand. So technology is something we are lacking and we need to come over that.
Thank you. Okay.
I think we must preserve it in whatever manner the art form deserves. Let's look at what the US Library of Congress is doing. And they still continue with microfilming and not with digitization because they do not know the life of digitization. And they have an operation right at the American Library on Curzon Road of Kasturba Gandhi Park. I think we must preserve it.
I'm Deepika Sood. I'm an interior designer. I also represent the Guild of Designers and Artists. Ashish Mohan mentioned about a young India. And we have a great demographic dividend in our country. 60% of the population is below the age of 35. The average age of this hall is 50 plus. Where is the young India here? Who's listening to all of you? Everybody sitting on the dais is probably on the other side of 50 and probably retired from their positions. I think you guys should be there in the audience and have some of the young India to be talking and listening, and we should be learning from them. And they are the guys who are actually going to drive this whole story of art, design, culture, technology, as our friend tells us here, forward. I think it's high time we look inwards and introspect and see what is it that we as senior citizens of the society, or people who've actually traveled a certain number of years in this whole thing, want from the country, and a country which actually represents the young. So what exactly are we trying to do here is what my question is. Look at the interior design world, Salone, Maison Objet. Indians are being represented there like how? The Indian designers there are doing great guns. I'm so proud of it. You come 27, 28, 29 to Pragati Maidan. There are 20 Indian young designers below the age of 30 who have been given complimentary spaces at an exhibition like Messe Frankfurt, free of cost, to exhibit their work. And the winners will be taken to Frankfurt. next year 2018, where India is the partner country representing the Indian culture in Frankfurt in an international exhibition which is of a world-class exhibition, the biggest exhibition in the world. So what are we talking here? I think the same can happen in dance that you're saying is dated, it's nobody is appreciating it, Indian cinema doesn't have it. We are talking about the same in paintings, we are talking about the same in several other fields. I think it's we who need to take that stand and say no, if we really want to see the change, be the change that we want to see. Sorry, I'm trying to quote Gandhiji, but that really is the crux of all the problem that we are discussing here. There's actually no problem. It's the problem is we as people are not being able to address it by embracing technology, by embracing the fact that the young people are smarter than us and they can actually teach us. So I'd like the panelists, the senior panelists here to throw some light on it, and I'd like to know where are those young people that we are talking about all the time, the entire evening we are talking about them. Where are they to listen to this and how are they going to take us and drive this forward?
I think probably is living history forward. Where have we stopped in India? Art is not a living history forward for us. Is this the conclusion? Something went wrong. Now, over the last 1,000 years, we've lost our confidence, self-confidence and self-reliability. Why did we lose that confidence? We were a fantastic nation. We were into art. We were into architecture. Where did we lose our confidence and self-respect? That's the first thing. All this newer generation and whatever, we are deviated. Now, how to address this? I entirely agree with Ashish. Art is free in India. Preservation of art is not art going forward. Art cannot be entrapped. Now, if you look at from Michelangelo to, say, the artist who was showing Leonardo da Vinci, they were the Renaissance period. They were not with the people. Till the newer artists like Impressionists came, like Monet came, they were connecting with people. Same with our dance forms. Dance was to be watched. It was not to be with the people. That is why Salman Khan's dance or Shah Rukh Khan's dance is very good these days, because it is connecting with people. So this is where we lost our art. Art is to move forward, is not to be put in CDs. I agree with Mr. Goel when he said, if you not look at the past, how can you go forward? That is the question which is to be answered. All our institutions, educational institutions, should be without any pressure of the government. When they go forward, they find somebody to be in the chair, they will go globally. Here the government puts a person in the chair that he is your boss. That is where we have to answer this, not the younger generation. Where have we gone wrong in carrying our art forward? Thank you very much.
You know, when you said all the problem who will take this forward and how it's gone wrong, art is with the artists. So all the processes, forget the systems, the protocols, the administration of it. The artist is the creator of art. The recipient is the Rasika or public at large. So your question was very valid, that what are we talking about and all this, how have we come so far, and despite and in spite of all that's happened in 70 years or 100 years. It's because the artists continue to work despite and in spite of the systems and the limitations that we are still talking about art and culture today in the post-independent India, because we put a heavy layer of management, heavy layer of funding, which was not people's funding, it was government funding. So the patronage, Kalidas ne kaha ki lata, creeper, not the creeper you see on streets of Metro India, but creeper, पेड़ को support, plant को और artist को support चाहिए. That's where Darbar culture came. Delhi is a Darbar culture. You know this person, that person, so it gets connected. All our patronage systems from the courts, and it's not recent, historically, that is one part. Other part, as Sir rightly points, is we may talk all this And as you said, interior decoration, where is young India? There is young India right in your row next to you. There is young India right there. Numbers are few because technology also plays a part. Since this is being webcast, I was told by many, they said, फिर तो हम आराम से देख लेंगे. हम इतनी दूर बस मेट्रो पकड़ के हैबिटेट आए, such an imposing building, parking कहाँ करेंगे? There's a mindset that technology is a very good tool and servant if you wish it to be, but it can be very controlling master also. And it happens to us all the time in this high-tech city we live in called Bangalore, with very bad roads, with very poor roads, where webcasting has created lack of audience. Because they said we can sit and sit in the comfort of our cell phone. Why am I going to drive to a hall for 2 hours or 1 hour and partake of this? So that's again, both works. Designers, as you say, internationally. Fashion designer, I worked with Marco. Aman is a great designer. We created this whole paradigm with Popul Jack at that time of NIFT, all these organizations. Some have proven to be successful, some haven't. That's the law of fate. But I think if arts, as I said, one point is delinked from patronage of government bodies, it's National Endowment of Arts decided by artists, it's Arts Council of England decided by artists, with only funding given by government, so artists have freedom. If Rajeev decides to have totally no painting in NGMA for 1 month, that is his prerogative, but there's a vision of art, he can share it with 5,000 students or not. So it is nice the way that you take all streams together. हमारी history की problem layers है. इतनी हम शताब्दियों की बात एक ही टाइम कर रहे हैं, not the शताब्दी express, but शताब्दी as in centuries. कि हम वो 10th century भी बोल रहे हैं. Monuments is a good example. If Aman and dear Francis had not intercepted and intervened, as one would say, and been the patrons, this fort would have become a multiplex or some other, a little airport or something. Rubble, okay, not a bubble, but a rubble. So it's also private interventions. Can you believe in the richest city of museums? You know which is the richest city of India for museums? Can anyone tell me? Ahmedabad. It has the maximum number of museums. You're surprised to learn this. Kite Museum, Utensil Museum, Bartan Museum, this museum, that museum. And the biggest textiles museum was created by the Sarbjeets. And you know its condition today? Once the person who created it was no more, the family just was not interested. So it is also individual, it's institutional, and it is circumstantial. And we have to live with this history of layers. There's no go. India is not 100 years old. That's the...
Something has gone wrong in last 1,000 years, or we have lost many things and layers, etc. I'd like to remind you of a very simple fact. The simple fact is that today what we deride as the Varna ashram system, before ashramas of life, brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha and sannyas. This was very operative in India for a very long time, and this was the time when India produced the maximum number of art, huge number. Now look at this distribution. You make money only in a small period of life, and then you support the 3 ashramas. You see, just look at it very simply. What were the Indian values? The Indian value was that those who earn will support education. Those who earn will support meditation. Those who earn will also support total freedom of sannyas or thinking or writing books or going around. Now, today we have a society where the values are upside down. The Education Ministry or Human Resource Ministry wants you to pay for every damn thing. See, the whole idea that there should be state-supported education is now dead. And again, the idea that you should take care of people who can think, people who can write, people who can retire and produce something very valuable. All this has disappeared from civilization, and I think unless we go not back, but unless we go within and see what has sustained us for all these years. If we do that,
I like the idea you talked about before, ashram. three of these you were not supposed to have sex in. So then you could concentrate on creativity in a different way, you know. Because as brahmachari, as vanprastha and sannyas, out of the four, you know, for 75 years you are not supposed to have sex. So only when you are a grihastha. So I think that then creativity took another form. You know, nowadays people break the rule because it begins in brahmacharya and it goes up till sannyasa.
But interestingly, I will end with an interesting anecdote. When I took over the National Gallery of Modern Art, I was told that the domain of National Gallery of Modern Art was post 1850, and the domain of National Museum was pre-1850. So what's that? So now there was an Angrez whose name was Goel, and there's a committee report that says, Goel committee report. I wanted to end with that. A rubber stamp that I need from England or well from wherever in the country. So I said I'd like to see the evidence. They're not available. The rubber stamp paper is not available. So I had to go and dig in the archives, you know, and get that report out. And it clearly said that in the main that these two institutions, and I also got, in fact, the real report which gave birth to National Gallery of Modern Art as education minister. What was his name? Mohan. वो भी मैंने किया था, speech भी नहीं किया, सब नहीं। बहुत ध्यान से बैठ के पढ़ा। Clearly said, how is this possible? Is there a date to modernity? Is there a date to contemporary? And is there a date to tradition? That's why my first statement was tradition of contemporary works. So I looked and re-looked at the sentence and transformed it. जिससे मुझे कोई पकड़ नहीं पाया. Young, old, contemporary, service. वो तो मैंने लगा है. Madam, वो तो इनमें की बात करेंगे ना. जितनी largest number of youthful exhibitions or middle-aged, mid-career exhibitions are all done during my tenure. I hope you had seen that. So I transformed that statement to that the National Gallery of Modern Art stands for the transformation that takes place from tradition to contemporaneity via Indianized modernity. I said they brought both the worlds together. And interestingly, that as a result of that, Dr. Siharin is a legendary man, transferred some of the finest miniatures to National Museum from the National Gallery of Modern Art. And interestingly, I mean, the recent exhibition National Museum which we went to the Metropolitan, I had loaned many of those and come with it. So this is the irony of life. Well, as I said, that there is no date to modernity, and there is no date to tradition. So youth and old both will live, in that transfer. Both have to learn from each other. Thank you.
I think that we should end actually on hope. And what Deepika said, was brushed aside. But what you said was very, very important. That, we have to make all that we are saying, it might be 200% sense, it has to be made attractive to the people who matter because we are on our way out, So, maybe you, since you're eternally 16, you should get
part of your side.
No, but I'm saying that, you should get what you're saying in short is that all of us fuddy wuddies, we're talking sense, but it's actually nonsense because we're talking among ourselves, So I think we have to get the young people, and at least in whichever connections, powers, whatever we have, to make it very alluring for those people. If we haven't made it, it's our fault, it's not their fault.
In conclusion, one phrase which will remain in mind after all this discussion really is what Ashish said. Connecting people. We have to connect, arts have to connect people. Unless there is that connection, the arts will not survive. Therefore, it's not a question of young India, old India, middle-aged India, past the prime, past 60s, past 70s. There are people who have created their best works beyond the age of 70s. There are people who created their best before 20s. But the validity of the art is, does it connect with people or not? If it does not connect with people, then is it art? Thank you.